Duara Sara Setheru. Duara Sara Setheru. Duara Sara Setheru. Duara Sara Setheru. Om Mati Materu. Om Mati Materu. Om Mati Materu. Om Mati Materu. Hiru Makiru. Hiru Makiru. Hiru Makiru. Hiru Makiru. Attack. Ucha, greetings. So we'll pick up where we left off. This will be a part 2. And I think this will be sufficient to complete this panel. There might be a part 3. We'll see. So remember, we went through this line of text behind the royal. And in front of the royal. So this group of tags is relating to this. These two lines of text are relating to this personality. And these are his monikers. These are spiritual names that tell something of the spiritual status of the personality. So they're not names just to have names like Eric or Paul or whatever. And these are names that are sort of labels on the spiritual status of the person. Or could also be the spiritual aspiration of the person. And this whole spiritual process, this line of text that we went through, is related to this divinity. And we spoke about how this divinity is in a position of exaltation. And the royal person is in the presence of this purification. There's a ritual of coolness and purification. And that at the end of this process, he's spiritually enlightened. The term Makeru. And this whole spiritual process is being presided over by Herein. The winged disc, the sun disc with the serpents coming out. It's a symbol of Beden. Another symbol of Beden, the classical symbol of Beden, is the sun disc with the wings. It's sort of an abbreviated symbol is the sun disc with the 2 serpents only. And we know this because it is shown to us in the temple of Heteru at Dendera, where the sun disc with the 2 serpents coming out are referred to as Herein. And here, again, this divinity is referred to as happy, so he's in the presence of happy. And he is going through this spiritual process that also leads to Makeru through of speech. So this divinity is also a form of Heru that's called Keb or Qebseneuf. So it's kind of a play on words. The Keb, the coolness, the and the purification of the aspirant. And these divinities are sons of Peru. So you can see the term Kurd, Keb, and the term that also goes with the ritual of lighting the incense. So this is a play on words. This is Qebseneuf, and this is happy. But it really means that he's in the presence of the purification. He's being purified. Through this ritual process. And there is text that is going along with this divinity. And this divinity and what they're offering to the royal. He says, NNK Amu Pet NNK Amutam. So you've been brought. So NN brought, K you, Amu within, Pet heaven. So you've been brought within heaven. NNK Amuta, you've been brought within the earth. So Qebseneuf has brought him to heaven and have brought him to earth. And when being brought to heaven, he's being brought to this exalted status where this divinity is. And that means that he's been brought to a higher consciousness, and that that higher consciousness sustains this personality while on earth. So he's sustained while on earth through the higher consciousness that is being presided over by Beden. And what that means is that on the earth plane, with the energies and the forces of the earth, that you're not confounded by these, you're not being brought down by these, you're not being overturned by these. You're not being overran by these. That you are In other words, the lower energies of the earth plane. So in other words, you're not ruled by the passions of the earth. You're not ruled by the passions of the lower nature. And that there is an ascension to a higher mystical realization in the path or the heaven. So you've been brought within heaven, and you've been brought within the earth. So the enlightened consciousness is sustained whether you're in heaven or in earth. So, and what that means is that enlightenment means a state of consciousness where you have transcended a worldly delusion and have discovered immortality. In other words, you've discovered yourself as the one supreme spirit. So you don't have a dualistic view of the divine. You realize that you and the divine are essentially the same, identical in your deepest underlying reality self. You and the divine are one. And this is being done through this process that is coming through the name of Qebseneuf, of the purification and the multitudinous, the instance mean that you're being held in the presence of the divine. So in reading into the name, you're reading into the process that the personality is going through. And that's what we did the last time. The name of the divinity. And these two divinities go together. They are both the sons of Peru. So the divinity tells something of the process. But in not every case, you have to be able to discern in which cases that is being supported. But generally speaking, the divinity is when you're reading the text, the whole thing is the scripture. What I mean by that is that the iconography, you have to read the iconography within the context of the text. And so it comes out. So what I coined a term called Hieroglyphs Physics. And that's when I'm looking at the term and essentially deconstructing it and revealing what the inner mystery of the term is. And it could be the name of a divinity, or it could be a term. And he's wearing the blue crown. It's commonly referred to as the warrior crown, but it's the technical Kemetic name is the Qebseneuf crown. And it relates to the ability to overcome the forces of the ego. Here in this depiction, in front of Apple, in front of the hawk, Qebseneuf, you can see he just have his hair loose, and it's hard to tell what crown, if any, he was wearing. But here, he's definitely wearing a crown. This has been damaged. So if you can look at this as a two parts to the same panel. So part one will be from here over, and part two will be from here to the left. So he's been brought to this exalted status, to this place of elevation. To this higher consciousness. And so he enlightened in the higher realms and enlightened on the lower realms. So you can have a job and going about your day-to-day duties and life and whatever else people do. And you're doing that through an enlightened consciousness. Or you can be in a heavenly, you can be in a state of spiritual ecstasy. And your consciousness is just as enlightened there. And you can be in a state of doing things, working, paying bills, and you're just as enlightened there. So there's no enlightenment when you're in a state of higher, mystical realms, and then when you're doing things in the world, you're acting worldly and being like a normal person and just being like everybody else. That your higher consciousness is sustained. Whether you're in the lofty plane of the pet, here, pet, Pt with the determinative for, the vault of the sky. So whether you're on the pet region or you're in the Ta region, it doesn't matter. Your mind is awakened and your awareness is true, and your awareness is unbroken. So then you realize that actually you and the divine are one, and everything is a manifestation of that divine. And all human beings are also manifestations of that one divine. So there's nothing but divinity. And that's an elevated, a very elevated philosophical concept, but it's also a very elevated state to achieve in your spiritual journey towards higher consciousness, towards enlightenment. And working with and you're going to see a very important concept that comes out of the next line that we do. But here it is important to understand the spiritual status of of a true enlightened being. That you're enlightened whether you're doing things temporality in temporal space and time, or whether you're in some exalted meditative state in spiritual ecstasy, or when you are absorbed in that essence, even while utilizing sensorial perception. Like you could be sitting, waiting online at a bank, and you become aware, or you are aware of that spiritual essence, which is your own inner divine nature. And so you're there all the time. So in other words, you've gone past the state of dual consciousness, and you're realize that there is only divinity. There's nothing else. Anything other than divinity is a pure illusion, is imagination. So you can see here, we're not talking about a dualistic form of religion. Kemetic spirituality is highly advanced. It's not the only advanced system, but it's among the advanced systems. So Buddhism is another advanced system. Okay. So in other words, this is the state that you are trying to achieve as a spiritual aspirant, to have a full awakening, and this is called the hands. You know, when you have a complete realization of the nature of self. By complete, I mean that you're not like a barometer. It's not like you go up and come down, go up and come down. And this is what this text is negating. It's negating the idea that when you're in a spiritual ecstasy, you're in communion with the divine. And when you are in time and space doing things, that you're disconnected from the divine. It's negating that, saying that wherever you are, whatever plane, dimension, whatever you want to call it, or wherever you are, you know, either taking care of your mom, washing dishes, you watching some news channel or whatever, that awareness is unbroken, sustained, it's uncompromised by egoism. So it intimates a full enlightened realization. And that's how you have to go about it. Meaning that's what you have to achieve, you know, when you start to expand yourself. Remember the awe, net, full expansion. So it's a very elevated and important point to understand. So it's not like, you know, you're all one communion with God on Sunday, and then Monday you're committing crimes, or you're doing things like against your, you know, moral and ethically unrighteous. Is that you have a full absorption in that realization of spirit. And that is spiritual enlightenment. Now you can see here the term Makedu is separated between the two names, Makedu, and here Pu Makedu is joined, and he's wearing the crown. He's in the presence of Happy. And the crown symbolizes the full sublimation of the ego. And this is going on within you. It's occurring within you. This process is happening, or this process is, you're working out this process within yourself. So no one really makes you angry. It's your own ego that's reacting to the world. Because someone can walk up to an enlightened being and say, "Hey, you're stupid," and then the enlightened person will be like, "Okay, well, whatever." Because the ego has been purified and sublimated. So you're not caught by the proclivities of the ego. So it's called a warrior crown, but not for the reasons that people think. It's not an outward war of fighting against, you know, enemies who are coming in and encroaching, or you're trying to conquer lands. And most of those stories are, you know, are fantasies. It's a war against your own ego. Is you are the light of spirit consciousness, not you and your egoistic notion, individuated identity concept of yourself, but in a deeper reality of yourself, you are spirit. And ego is infringing on your awareness of that which you are. And the ego is trying to usurp the primacy of your personality, meaning to act out of egoism. And that is not the rightful place of the ego. That leads to pain, suffering, misery. But when you have purified the ego and gone through the spiritual evolutionary process of cleansing the ego, what happens is that the ego becomes sublimated, and you now are projecting that higher consciousness, that higher spirit consciousness. You're operating through your personality. And the ego has been sublimated. And that's the whole issue in the Asara resurrection. So this text, we'll go back to phase 1. This text is being related to this divinity, the hawk, the Qebseneuf. And notice that the feet of the divinity are pointed away from the royal. So the divinity is turning towards the royal. And how do you get the divinity to turn towards you? Is by your spiritual disciplines, your Shadi disciplines. The practice of integral yoga. So wisdom, rek, right action, mat, ari, meditation, ua, devotion, uashu. You put those 4 together and you blend them together and you have a qualitative spiritual program. Notice I didn't say postures and that's it. Doing postures and sweat yoga and stuff like that. It's not really yoga from the classical sense of what yoga means. The Kemetic term is simatawi, and we're using that term in a proper context of spiritual integration. And so when you perform the Shadi disciplines, the divinity turns towards you. And then you receive the grace, the blessings, the boons from the divinity. Again, you see, happy, his feet are away from the royal, and his head and his torso is turned towards the divinity. So the key is how to get the divinities to turn towards you. And that's where the spiritual practice comes in, and proper propitiation of the divinities. You get them on your side so that you can conquer the forces of negativity within your own personality. So you can wear the crown, the keperesh, and that's metaphorical. You're not going to be wearing a crown on your head, walking around. Oh, I conquered my ego. That's even more egoism. These are metaphorical symbols that is conveying the spiritual teaching. Okay, so let's go to the text behind happy. Enen ke mesu ke neteru bird and au ke ari senu and ke ya. So you have been brought to be born, you, from the gods and goddesses. Your body parts have come forth from those gods and goddesses. And they do this for you. Behold. So the first key is he's been brought so that he can be born from he's been brought that he's been born from the gods and goddesses. So the spiritual process, he has been brought to this place where now he has been given a birth through the gods and goddesses. And all of his body parts have come forth from those divinities. And it's not one divinity, it's all of the divinities. You see here you have 3 flags. or three symbols for neter. It means neterus, it means gods and goddesses, not just a single divinity. So how is it that he's being born from all the gods and goddesses? And this is a serious statement of ancient Egyptian henotheism. Henotheism means there's one supreme being, and all of the gods and goddesses emanate or emerge from that one supreme being. So he has been born from among the gods and goddesses. And what that means is that he has realized their essence within himself. So it's a new birth into a higher consciousness. And they have done, meaning the gods and goddesses, have done this for you. And that is their action to you, for you. To do this so that you can come forth as a veritable divinity. So think about that. You're being, and in the papyrus text, and also in the pyramid text. In the pyramid text, it talks about how they initiate each the gods and goddesses. So he's eating the cosmic forces. In the papyrus text, it talks about how each body part is a different divinity. So if all of your body parts are a different divinity, it means essentially you are composed of the divinity. You are a manifestation of what that one supreme divine in your temporal nature. So you are a projection, a manifestation of that one supreme divine, that all-encompassing transcendental divine. You have come from that. And the birth comes when you realize that through your spiritual process. So your true DNA is the spirit and substance of the gods and goddesses. So your physical DNA is merely, if you really want to cut to the chase, your physical DNA is illusory, and it's just put there for the convention to fulfill the outcome of the Ari, which is the karmic basis. So if your karmic basis marks for you to be a woman of African descent born in the Caribbean, that's what's going to happen. If the Ari marks that you're going to be a Caucasian person born in Alabama, that's what's going to happen. Because it's marked in your unconscious mind based upon your previous past actions. Your own Ari has caused it. And in this lifetime, you may look one way. In a succeeding lifetime, you may look another way. And so the body you have now is transient and illusory. And the body that you're going to have in the future is also transient and illusory. So what that means in practical terms is that you are essentially spirit, and your body is a manifestation of your ego basis, which is your Ari. And so you are essentially, you are not your body. Your body is a construct of your mind and is essentially illusory. It's a hard concept. It's a hard teaching to grasp. But if you grasp it and you understand it and you realize it, then you will be makiru, you'll be true of speech, meaning you would be spiritually enlightened if you realize that. If you don't realize that, you'll be just like all the normal people. And this kind of elevated teaching, philosophy, you know, it looks on at it makes racism look, you know, incredibly ridiculous. Because in this lifetime, you might be a Caucasian person hating Black people. And then because you were so messed up in your hatred, you might be born as a, let's say, as an Indian person in Calcutta, in the poverty of the most poverty-stricken area in, you know, in India, if not come back as an animal. And then you have to work your way back up to the human realm. But most likely you'll come back more degraded than you are now because of hatred. Hatred and misunderstanding of reality is what causes suffering and causes degradation and de-evolution, which is basically being degraded by your own thoughts and feelings, your negative thoughts and feelings. So those negative thoughts and feelings, you have to guard yourself and sublimate those negative thoughts and feelings, and so you can be a master of yourself. You're not trying to master people and, you know, be a conqueror of nations. And, you know, it's interesting. Alexander the Great was a messed up person. He was screwed up. You know, he had, you know, he was basically mentally ill. All of these people that I think that they're so great and they're conquering, they're all messed up. Gabor Mate, who is a psychologist, who was in an interview one time, and they were asking him about people like Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and Trump. You know, all of these people, it doesn't matter what side they're on. He was saying how basically that they were all suffering from childhood traumas, and that's why they are the way they are. And childhood traumas from their upbringing by their parents. And the trauma can be so deep that you can, you know, you can kill people without, you know, without remorse, without compunction, without any feeling. And people do that. It just means that they're messed up. You know, they're not elevated. And what the teaching's saying is that if you apply yourself, if you come to the teaching and the philosophy in the right way, then you'll be in this exalted position with these exalted beings, these divinities. And they will take you, they will elevate you in the heavenly plane, and they will elevate you on earth. And they will bring you to be born, all of your body parts, to be born and come forth from the gods and goddesses, the divinities. And you will wear a crown, you will wear the crown, metaphorically. You'll wear the crown and you'll be a master of the lower nature. And your heart will be filled with unbounded, infinite compassion and empathy, which is derived from the infinitude of divine nature. You can call it divine nature, you can call it net, you can call it nebular, the infinitude of that. And you would therefore discover immortality and overcome the pain and suffering of death. You will not suffer in life, and you will not suffer in the transition phase of death. Because in a state of Makeru, enlightenment, Makeru, death appears as an illusion. And you are losing the body, but nothing is happening to you because you are not the body, you are the spirit. And for people who don't understand this, they can have $5 billion in the bank. It doesn't matter. That's not going to save them on their deathbed. And you can be a billionaire and Makeru, and you'll have the righteous outcome. You can be a normal person. You're not to be living in poverty and stuff like that. Let's say a middle-class person, a Makeru. Let's say you're at the time of your death, you probably, let's say 30, 40, 50,000, maybe 100,000 in the bank, far away from $1 billion. And if you're Makeru, at the time of your death, it will be no problem. Because material things, money is of no consequence to the process of death and dying. You can be a trillionaire, and if you're ignorant, you will suffer. Or you can be a regular person and Makeru, and you will not suffer. Because you would have come into the realization of one's own divine higher nature. So this is a very powerful panel. That the maut, or the takeaway, the main theme of this panel is being true of speech, which is being spiritually enlightened. And people participate in all kinds of activities that take them away from that. They avoid the process of enlightenment. Okay, all of your famous people, your stars or whatever, and you don't have to wait, until they die to see the effects. Just look at their life, how things go, and how to handle those things, and you will see what we're talking about. Because of being involved in the world and chasing after fame. And that doesn't lead to true happiness and bliss and perfection. What leads to that is expansion. Expansion to be as raw, where your higher consciousness is sustained forever and you discover eternity. And in that, the whole world could collapse, and you will not suffer because of it. Because once you realize that the world is illusory, then there's nothing to hold on to. There's nothing to grieve. And so if there's nothing to grieve, then you do not suffer. If there's a misapprehension, you will find things to grieve and you will suffer because of it. These are hard things for people to wrap their minds around, to understand. But this is how the divine has set it up. And this is what you have caused yourself by coming into the world and participating in the world process. And the world process is experiences of alternating pleasure and pain, with the pleasures being modified instances of pain. It doesn't appear or experience as a pain, but it's a pain simply modified to appear as pleasure. So in other words, all life is suffering, whether you're experiencing pain or pleasure, it's all suffering. And what the serious spiritual aspirant works towards is being directed and presided over by Vedet, to allow Vedet to be the driving force behind your movement. And by movement, I mean your spiritual evolutionary movement. And so the physics of the term that we did the last time gives great insight into this process of spiritual enlightenment, because it intimates a purification, a cleansing of the personality. And then you are brought to this state of enlightenment. But you have to understand that it's really you that's doing it. All of these cosmic forces are within you. But you have to create the proper environment for these forces to operate in your favor. or else you'd be, tossed against the shores of the world, and and it might sound bleak or morose or something like that, but that's how the world is. How it sounds doesn't matter. It's how it is. And so, everyone experiences their allotment of misfortune. And so misfortune will come. The point is, how will you ascertain and experience that misfortune? If you're wearing your blue crown, with your serpent reared up, you'll experience that misfortune as an expression of Ari and nothing else, and you'll see through it into its illusoriness. If you don't have your blue crown because you're frolicking in the world, you're going to experience that misfortune as instances of suffering, anxiety, frustration, disillusionment, uncertainty, loneliness, that kind of thing. Loneliness, because you can be alone but not lonely. So loneliness, the experience and feeling of loneliness is a psychological construct. If you are alone, you not necessarily have to be lonely. Because since there is only God, you're not alone. You're by yourself anyway, because there is only one, there's only divinity. So how can you experience loneliness if there's nothing other than yourself? You experience loneliness because your ego has conscripted you to the idea of individuality. So if I don't have these people around me, if I don't have that person around me, then obviously I'm alone and I have to feel lonely and bad about myself. I don't have any friends, etc. But if you realize that essentially there is only divinity, then you need not feel alone because you're eternally alone. There's only the self, and you are that self. And with that, so I think we'll do one more, because there's one more little piece to this that we'll discuss. So that'll be it for this evening. Heru ma keru. Heru ma keru. Heru ma keru. Heru ma keru. Duat Qebseneuf. Duat happy. Attack. Do everyone until we meet again. Attack.
Do it.